The war on drugs was a full frontal attack on the turbulent 60s when guys who looked like this were commanded to adopt a hair-trigger, us-them mentality about drug users, especially if they were activists who looked something like this. Drugs were vilified or deified. Some thought that if anyone used them, the world would come to an end. Some thought that if everyone used them, the world would live as one. I came to resent it when political or cultural protests were reduced to drug use, when drugs were fetishized. Being stoned didn't make our generation any hipper or more progressive than our parents were when they were high on gin. It wasn't about the drugs, which some could handle and some couldn't. That balanced perspective didn't prevent me, when I worked for a public housing tenant association, from sponsoring a DARE officer whose threatening zero-tolerance approach inspired the children to write, "Don't do the crime if you can't do the time, taking one step closer to death by taking drugs," made for a feel-good photo op that I proudly put up on the tenant website. I worked there long enough to see some of those kids join 900,000 of their American peers working the illegal drug market, forced to snitch on friends and family, victims of a life-threatening cat and mouse game, while police cars rolled through the project, a community reduced to a crime scene. But it wasn't until I joined these unlikely allies that I connected the dots between so many of the problems I saw at that project and the policy of prohibition, a policy that poisons everything it touches and touches nearly everything. LEAP's fundamental message is that drug policy may be fueled by self-interest and hysteria, but it's not about the drugs. The same amphetamine the military gives our soldiers to heighten combat readiness rots the minds and bodies of others. The same heroin, consumed sadly but safely in other countries in a supported, regulated setting, is blamed for the deaths of thousands of Americans. The same cocaine that fuels the hard-working financial and entertainment industries can fatally overtax the brain and heart. The same marijuana that helps high achievers with creativity, vision, and productivity is a dead-end cloud of false wisdom for others. And the same alcohol that may soothe or cure can seduce and destroy. In fact, when LEAP speakers ask drug warriors if they support the prohibition of this particular drug, they just change the subject. We survived and now mock such absurdity, including the 20th century prohibition on yet another activity said to addict our children and sap their initiative. Yes, pinball was prohibited in our major cities. Nobody takes these laws seriously, except those whose lives are ruined by them. Nobody takes these laws seriously, except those whose lives are ruined by them. But the tide has turned and it's no longer a third-rail issue for politicians. So how will the modern prohibitionists squeeze every last arrest and federal dollar out of yesterday's folly? Two strategies slow reform, both of which echo the fetishizing of drugs that shaped the 60s. The big scare. Pinball prohibition may be laughable, but give a moment to the parents' real concern about their kids, some of whom probably were losing themselves in this seductive activity. Parental concern is fertile ground for exploitation. Witness media coverage which labels every increase in drug abuse an epidemic. Witness professional drug warriors who pointed the disease-spreading drug scene, exploding meth cookeries that send burned children to emergency rooms, and drug dealers turning the neighborhoods into killing fields. They manipulate the legitimate fears of parents who have lost children to drugs and the crimes committed to support their habit by asking, "Isn't this what legalization brings?" And so, after a deep breath, our unapologetic response is, no, this is what legalization prevents, which starts the day we remove the criminal noose from those struggling with addiction. It's 1933, and a prohibitionist points to an illicit gin mill that has produced a contaminated product that literally blinded the person who drank it and then exploded, leaving a badly burned baby. He turns to you and asks, "Isn't this what legalization brings?" Same question, same answer. It's the policy, not the drugs, even the hardest drugs. The second strategy parades as moderation, but in fact, it's just the big stall. Today's smart prohibitionist easily admits that addiction is a public health issue and that too many are jailed for possession, as though they always thought that. But they insist we must crack down on the traffickers. It's called decriminalization, and it's as seductive as a drug. In fact, as LEAP points out, this describes alcohol prohibition. It wasn't illegal to possess or to drink, just to manufacture, transport, and sell. Except,
I only drink for medicinal purposes anyway.
Medical alcohol. Sound familiar? Same approach, same outcome. Beer makes the trip across the border from Mexico without violence. Marijuana makes the same trip, and blood flows. New York decriminalized marijuana in the 70s, the same decade they re-legalized pinball machines, yet continues every year, including this one, to slam tens of thousands of mostly low-income people of color into the criminal justice system simply for having that very drug. We can do better than decriminalization, and we can do better than just focusing on marijuana. If any popular drug is legal to use, but illegal to manufacture, transport, and sell, will the violence stop? Lower income communities have been torn apart, children forcibly removed from their families, sent to foster homes, and often lost to the sex trade or prison for violating nothing more than these puritanical laws. We need to connect the dots from those problems to drug prohibition, and nobody can do this with more intensity and credibility than a LEAP speaker. They have been on the front lines of this war for decades. My generation perfected impatience. We believed in instant coffee and instant justice. Today's political activists make us look like turtles. They have seen workable alternatives, the foundations of a prohibition-free future that is this close. Just as when we drive by a prison, we are this close to people locked inside for something we or our friends or our children or our parents have done with a wink and a nod and impunity. Every nonviolent inmate who broke only these laws is a victim in need of restoration. They wait on us, minute by minute by minute. Ending the drug war's prohibition of consensual behavior with its inevitable abuse of the most vulnerable among us is how today's generation will honor and carry on the human rights movement that flowered during my youth. There are winnable initiatives nearly everywhere, waiting on your energy and power. Like others before, this movement needs a voice and a vehicle. And surprisingly, amazingly really, these former hair-trigger us-them drug warriors are the broad shoulders we can ride. Working for LEAP has been a profound and transformative experience for me. Working with LEAP, having a LEAP speaker come to your place of work, your social group, your college, anywhere, and they will go everywhere, will be a profound and transformative experience for you. You will be amazed at what they say. Please follow up with us. Thank you.